Why did the Western world erase the Book of Enoch from the Bible, but Africa kept it with her own life? There is a secret of more than 2,000 years preserved by the Ethiopian church that reveals who Enoch really was and what he saw in the heavens. If the rest of the world discarded this text, it was because it gave too much power to those who read it. And it is precisely because it is such strong content that YouTube often hides our videos. So do the following. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel now. Many people tell us that they have stopped receiving notifications because the algorithm decides to silence truths that deviate from the norm. By signing up, you ensure that this connection to our ancestral history is not severed. Don't let the system decide what you can know. Stay until the end, because what Africa has in store will change everything you think about the Bible. The book of Genesis mentions Enoch in such an enigmatic way that his presence echoes like an unsolved mystery within biblical passages. While the narrative quickly sketches the lives and deaths of the patriarchs, the mention that Enoch walked with God and that God took him to himself creates a break in the monotonous pattern of the genealogy. This choice of words, although brief, is an invitation to delve into a universe of interpretations and speculations. The absence of details about his death or burial contrasts sharply with the detailed narrative about the longevity and mortality of the other patriarchs, suggesting that his experience was unique and deeply significant. But what does it really mean to walk with God? Is it a metaphor for a heightened level of spirituality, a connection that transcends the human? Or is there something more literal, something that ancient texts could reveal? The facts reveal that, while the West opted for a more restricted biblical canon, other texts related to Enoch were preserved in older traditions, especially in regions of Africa. The Book of Enoch, widely preserved in Ethiopia, offers a detailed and expansive view of what the biblical text only hints at. The truth is that this book, considered apocryphal by many Christian traditions, describes Enoch not only as a man who walked with God, but as someone who saw visions of the heavens, who was carried by angels and who witnessed the secrets of the universe. He became an intermediary between the divine and the human, a figure of transcendental wisdom and knowledge. Evidence indicates that, during the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, many texts were excluded from the official biblical canon, and the Book of Enoch was one of those affected. The decision to omit this text may have been guided by an attempt to simplify Christian doctrine or control the flow of knowledge that challenged the dominant narratives of the time. However, in Ethiopia, the Book of Enoch has been maintained as part of the sacred scriptures, reflecting a rich spiritual tradition that recognizes the complexity and richness of stories that the canonical Bible only touches on superficially. What few realize is that this exclusion did not erase Enoch's impact. On the contrary, it reinforced curiosity and the search for answers beyond what was officially sanctioned. Africa, with its oral and written traditions, has preserved not only the text but the idea that the divine interacts with the human in ways that defy simple understanding. The question remains, by eliminating these stories, what else do we lose about our understanding of spirituality and connection to the divine? Ending the narrative about Enoch with a simple "God took him for himself" is almost like an invitation to explore the unknown, to seek what the written lines do not reveal. What Enoch saw and experienced are visions and secrets that continue to inspire and intrigue those who venture beyond the canonical text. Reality shows that there is much more between the lines than what is read at first glance. So what does it really mean to be taken by God? This question resonates deeply, challenging us to look beyond what is said, in search of what is still hidden. What few realize is the depth of the link between the Book of Enoch and the African tradition, specifically the Ethiopian one, which endures and preserves what many consider one of the most enigmatic literary gems of the ancient world. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, one of the oldest Christian traditions on the planet, has not only kept the Book of Enoch as part of its canon, but also venerated it as a source of transcendent wisdom and knowledge. Reality shows that Ethiopia's recognition of the value of the Book of Enoch dates back to a time when the West was still struggling to define what should be considered sacred. While European councils debated and eliminated texts, Ethiopia, through Ge'ez, its liturgical language, continued to read, study, and be inspired by the words of Enoch. It turns out that the Book of Enoch is not just a religious text. Is a testemunho de uma visão de mundo que entrelaça o divino com o humano, o celestial com o terreno. It details narratives about the Watchers, angels who descended to earth and interacted with humanity, something that resonated deeply in African traditions of spiritual beings influencing the human world. Enoch's accounts of his celestial travels, his visions of the cosmos, and his revelations about the future of humanity offer a spiritual perspective that goes beyond what is found in the canonical Bible. This text presents a universe where the divine is not just a distant presence, but an active force that shapes reality. The facts reveal that the decision of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church to preserve the Book of Enoch prevented this knowledge from falling into oblivion. For centuries, the West considered the text dangerous or heretical, perhaps because of its challenging theological implications that questioned the dominant narrative. But for Ethiopians, the text was a source of cultural and spiritual identity and continuity. By keeping it alive, they also kept alive a tradition of resistance and authenticity, a testament that Africa not only contributed to religious history, but also shaped its narratives in ways that the world is still beginning to recognize. Documents prove that the fragments of the Book of Enoch, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, serve to validate the authenticity of the text that Ethiopia has always preserved in its entirety. This encounter between modern archaeology and ancient tradition highlighted the importance of the African role in maintaining a global spiritual heritage. Ethiopia did not wait for external validation to value what it had. She knew through her own traditions and beliefs the deep meaning and relevance of the text. As the Western world finally recognizes the importance of the Book of Enoch, a question persists. What else can we learn from the traditions that preserved these texts when all others abandoned them? Ethiopia reminds us that there is a wealth of wisdom and spirituality still waiting to be discovered and understood. What would be the true shape of the universe if seen through the eyes of Enoch? The Book of Enoch reveals a heavenly scenario that challenges not only common understanding, but also the linearity of the biblical narrative itself. Led by angels, Enoch traverses realms beyond human imagination. He sees the storehouses of the winds, where weather forces are stored and released according to divine will, and the treasures of snow and hail, symbolizing the purity and judgment that hover over creation. In addition to these elements, Enoch visits the foundations of the earth, a metaphor that suggests a deep understanding of the foundations of the physical and spiritual world. The truth is that what Enoch witnesses during these journeys is not a simple astral journey, but a revelation of the cosmic order that governs everything that exists. Historical records show that the sophistication of this cosmology, described in such detail in the Book of Enoch, was far advanced for any time in which the text could have been conceived. The vision of the divine throne that Enoch describes shares parallels with prophetic passages from Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Revelation, presenting a throne not as an object, but as a living organism of light and consciousness, reflecting the complexity and unity of all things. What few realize is that Enoch's account is not limited to a static vision of the divine. In the narrative, there is a constant interaction between the celestial and the terrestrial, where Enoch becomes a point of convergence between these worlds. He sees the places where the souls of the dead await judgment, a vision that offers a glimpse of what happens beyond death, suggesting the continuity of existence in a form that transcends earthly life. This perception reinforces the idea that death, for Enoch, is not an end, but a transition to a state of greater understanding and unity with the divine. It turns out that Enoch's journey culminates in an experience of integration with the throne of the great saint, a divine presence that not only governs but also permeates all creation. This encounter does not result in a simple static vision, but in a profound transformation that alters the very essence of Enoch. According to the apocryphal text, this proximity to the divine throne implies a fusion of realities, where Enoch does not return to the world as a mere human, but as a being who has transcended the limitations of mortality. The story reveals that Enoch's description of heaven is not just an otherworldly narrative, but a redefinition of the relationship between the human and the divine. He challenges us to rethink our understanding of the universe and the divine presence in it. Enoch becomes an intermediary, a link between the celestial mystery and the human experience, expanding the perspective that spirituality is not just a path of separation, but of union with the cosmos. Thus, what Enoch saw is not just a vision, but an invitation to explore our own journey to the divine. The question that confronts us is, to what extent are we willing to follow Enoch in his quest for knowledge and integration with the divine? The answer to this question can redefine our understanding of the very purpose of life. Reality shows that Enoch, as a celestial scribe, plays a fundamental role in mediating between the divine and the earthly. This function not only underlines his spiritual importance, but also highlights the relevance of his contribution to the record of heavenly wisdom. In the Book of Enoch, he acts as a privileged observer of the transgressions of the Watchers, angels who descend to earth and corrupt humans. By recording these transgressions, Enoch not only documents supernatural events, but also provides crucial testimony to a cosmic conflict that has direct repercussions for humanity. What few realize is that their role as scribe is not limited to a mere transcription of events. He becomes the conduit through which the Watcher's petitions are conveyed to God and divine responses are transmitted back, solidifying his position as an indispensable intermediary. It turns out that in an era when the written record was a way of preserving and transmitting sacred knowledge, Enoch's position as heavenly scribe gave him unique authority. Unlike other biblical figures whose texts are inspired by God, Enoch writes from a direct and personal experience in heaven, which transforms his chronicles into documents of unsurpassable authority. This particularity is what made the Book of Enoch so valued during the Second Temple period, being frequently cited and considered an authoritative source for theological and cosmological questions that canonical texts did not fully address. However, when rabbinic canonization was carried out after the destruction of the Second Temple, the exclusion of the Book of Enoch did not reflect a denial of its veracity, but rather the need to construct a canon that met the demands of a community in crisis and seeking identity. Historical records show that the exclusion of the Book of Enoch from the official canon did not erase its influence. On the contrary, it continued to be read and preserved in traditions outside the Judeo-Christian mainstream, especially in Ethiopia, where it was maintained as an essential part of the scriptures. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, recognizing the importance of Enoch's role as a scribe, preserved the text in its entirety, reaffirming the connection between the human and the divine that it represents. This preservation is not only a matter of cultural resistance, but also a testament to the complexity and richness of African spiritual traditions, which value diversity of perspectives on the divine. Evidence suggests that Enoch's role as celestial scribe resonated deeply with cultures that value oral and written tradition as a means of preserving ancestral wisdom. In Africa, where orality and writing coexist as forms of knowledge transmission, Enoch is seen as a guardian of sacred knowledge. Its function of recording interactions between the Watchers and the divine is a reflection of the profound interconnection between the spiritual and the mundane, a central feature of African cosmologies. The question that arises is, to what extent has the exclusion of texts like the Book of Enoch from the Western canon limited our understanding of the role of spiritual intermediaries in the construction of divine knowledge? What this story teaches is that the authority of a text lies not just in its inclusion in an official canon, but in the relevance and impact it has on the cultures that preserve it. Enoch, as a celestial scribe, continues to inspire those who seek to understand the complex web that connects the human and the divine. The search for answers about what Enoch witnessed in the heavens is not just a journey through ancient history, but an invitation to explore the depths of spirituality and human understanding. How is it possible that such a brief narrative in Genesis expands into a cosmic drama in the Book of Enoch? The reality is that the Book of Enoch offers a deeply detailed look at the Watchers, angelic beings who descended to earth, led by Semjaza and Azazel. These 200 angels did not come just out of desire. His descent to Mount Hermon was a conscious act, a deliberate pact that involved the transmission of hidden knowledge to humanity. These teachings included astrology, metallurgy, and other arts that transformed human societies, but also resulted in unpredictable consequences, leading to widespread corruption. In this context, Enoch emerges as a singular figure, a mediator between the divine and the earthly, a role that places him in a unique position within the narrative of the Book of Enoch. The facts reveal that Enoch was chosen by the Watchers to be their intercessor before the Most High, a role that not only demonstrates his prominent position, but also his deep understanding of the dynamics between the human and the divine. While the Watchers awaited judgment for their transgressions, Enoch was tasked with taking their petitions to God. He became a vital link between two realities, traveling between the heavenly and earthly realms. It is this intermediary role that highlights the exceptionality of Enoch, who not only communicated with God, but also carried divine messages back to the fallen angels. His ability to navigate between these worlds made him a figure of respect and reverence among both humans and celestial beings. The truth is that the Book of Enoch paints a picture of a universe where divine knowledge is a powerful bargaining chip, and the Watchers, by sharing these secrets, challenged the cosmic order. The complexity of his actions, far from being merely carnal, reflects a quest for power and influence, which resulted in an imbalance that led to the flood. But what few realize is that Enoch's intervention saved knowledge from being completely lost, since he was able to record and transmit the events he witnessed. His narrative not only preserves the history of the Watchers, but serves as a warning about the use of knowledge and the consequences of violating divine laws. Analysis indicates that Enoch, when taken by God, was not only spared from earthly death, it has been preserved for future missions that transcend time. This idea of Enoch as an immortal being, a node in the network between the heavenly and the earthly, suggests that his task as an intercessor continues at a level that we do not yet fully understand. His departure without bodily death implies a state of being that transcends ordinary human existence, solidifying his function as an eternal mediator. The question that remains is, what did Enoch know that made him so indispensable to both sides of this complex cosmic equation? Enoch not only witnessed events of transcendent importance, he played an active role in shaping them, ensuring that the balance between the celestial and the human was maintained. His story is a powerful reminder that true understanding of the divine lies not just in knowing, but in being the channel through which knowledge can flow. The story reveals that the connection between Enoch and the black people transcends the boundaries of conventional narrative, finding an echo at the heart of African spiritual tradition. The Book of Enoch not only survived, but flourished within the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, an institution that represents a spiritual lineage deeply rooted in Africa. This church, unlike those that emerged in Europe, is not a product of colonial evangelization, but an authentic manifestation of African spirituality that dates back to the Jewish traditions of Ethiopia. The Kebra Nagast, a sacred text linking the Ethiopian lineage to that of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, is a living testament to this continuity. It not only preserves the history of a people, but affirms the indissoluble bond between biblical Israel and African civilizations. It turns out that the presence of the Book of Enoch in the Ethiopian canon is not a mere historical accident, but a reflection of African resistance against the dominant narrative that attempted to suppress their voice and spirituality. Documents prove that while Europe debated and discarded books that did not conform to its theological vision, Ethiopia kept alive a rich and complex tradition that recognized the importance of Enoch. By considering the Book of Enoch sacred, Ethiopia was not just preserving a text, but affirming a cultural and spiritual legacy that resists the doctrinal uniformity imposed by the West. The facts reveal that this preservation was not just a matter of faith, but of identity. In a world where African history was often rewritten or erased, keeping the Book of Enoch was an act of cultural affirmation, a declaration that Africa had and still has a unique vision of spirituality that deserves to be recognized and respected. Furthermore, the preservation of the Book of Enoch in Africa serves as a powerful reminder that wisdom and knowledge do not always align with dominant narratives. While the West rediscovered fragments of the Book of Enoch among the Dead Sea Scrolls, Ethiopia had already kept it for generations, demonstrating that progress does not always lie in discovery, but in the preservation of what is already known. Research shows that this continuity is a reflection of the rich African cultural tapestry, where oral and written traditions coexist to keep the ancestral heritage alive. In Ethiopia, the Book of Enoch, it is not just a religious record. It is a pillar of an identity that refuses to be erased. The connection between Enoch and the black people, therefore, is not simply a matter of history, but of continuous and unbreakable presence. While the Western world tries to rebuild what was lost, Africa reminds us that true power lies in those who never forget. The question remains, if Africa has preserved so much, what more could we learn if we looked more closely at the traditions that never left aside what is sacred? Metatron, a mysterious entity in Jewish mystical tradition, is often associated with Enoch, the ancestor of Noah who walked with God. This transformation of Enoch into Metatron, as described in the third book of Enoch, challenges conventional notions of separation between the human and the divine. Metatron is seen as the Prince of Divine Presence, the highest angel, positioned closest to the heavenly throne. This controversial identification raises profound questions about the nature of divinity and humanity. Reality shows that the concept of Metatron as transformed Enoch suggests a continuity of existence that transcends mortality and redefines the boundaries between the earthly and the heavenly. The facts reveal that this tradition of Enoch as Metatron is preserved mainly in Jewish mystical texts, such as the Sefer Hekhalot, and also in the Ethiopian tradition, which maintains the Book of Enoch as part of its sacred canon. Resistance to accepting this idea in traditional rabbinic Judaism may be rooted in a fear of diluting strict monotheism and opening space for interpretations that challenge the established theological framework. But the reality is that this narrative of Enoch's transformation into Metatron offers an alternative vision, where the human potential to reach divine levels of understanding and existence is recognized. This aligns with many African spiritual traditions that recognize the interconnection between the spiritual and physical worlds. It turns out that the figure of Metatron not only redefines Enoch's role as a simple human who walked with God, but elevates him to an almost divine status, serving as a point of intersection between the divine and the human. This idea reinforces the view that Enoch did not die like the others, but was transformed and continues to exist in a state that is as close as possible to the divine essence. This offers a perspective where human spiritual evolution is not only possible, but is a path that can lead to fusion with the divine, a vision that resonates deeply in esoteric and mystical traditions. Evidence suggests that the identification of Enoch as Metatron not only expands understanding of Jewish spirituality, but also connects this tradition to African spiritual roots, where Enoch is venerated. In Ethiopia, the preservation of the Book of Enoch is a testament to the continuity and importance of this narrative, which suggests that African spirituality has been a guardian of these ancient and complex traditions. The question that arises is, to what extent can this connection between Enoch and Metatron teach us about the possibilities of spiritual transformation and about the hidden potentials within the human spiritual tradition? The story reveals that Enoch's transformation into Metatron invites us to explore the depths of mysticism and to reconsider the limits of what we understand as divine and human. This narrative is more than a historical account. É convite a questionar e a expandir nossa compreensão do que significa estar em comunhão com o divino, uma busca que continua a inspirar aqueles que procuram transcender as limitações do mundo material. The final question remains, are we ready to accept and explore the possibilities of this spiritual transformation that goes beyond the traditional boundaries of faith? What few realize is that the Book of Enoch offers a unique vision of future judgment, a revelation that transcends the simple apocalyptic account. Enoch, unlike many prophets, did not just hear the divine words, he saw them manifest in the heavenly realms. This eyewitness testimony transforms the Book of Enoch from a spiritual speculation into a vivid and direct account of the cosmic consequences that await humanity and celestial beings. Reality shows that through his visions, Enoch becomes the first to outline the fate of the righteous and the wicked, providing a glimpse of souls in waiting, awaiting the great day of judgment. This concept of a final judgment and the separation of souls are central themes that resonate deeply in Abrahamic traditions, evidencing the lasting influence of Enoch. The facts reveal that the impact of the Book of Enoch goes beyond its exclusion from the Western biblical canon. The quote in the New Testament letter of Jude, "Behold, the Lord cometh with his holy myriads to execute judgment upon all," underlines the prophetic legitimacy that the text holds, even when not officially recognized. The inclusion of this quote indicates that, despite its exclusion, the Book of Enoch was and continues to be a source of inspiration and spiritual authority. Acontece que Enoch não era apenas visionário, mas cronista do divino, alguém que testemunhou as complexas interações entre o celestial e o terreno, registrando as consequências das transgressões dos vigilantes. These fallen angels, who descended to earth and corrupted humans, are a reminder of the consequences of defying divine order, a theme that Enoch observed and conveyed in stunning detail. Evidence points to Enoch's view of judgment directly influencing subsequent apocalyptic literature, shaping the narrative of Revelation in the New Testament. The clarity with which he describes the fate of the watchers and the separation of the righteous from the wicked offers a powerful narrative that resonates with the Christian concept of the final judgment. The Ethiopian Church, recognizing the depth of these revelations, preserved the Book of Enoch as a vital part of its canon, ensuring that these visions were not lost. This act of preservation was not just a defense of tradition, but a recognition of the spiritual and cultural importance that the text represents. The story reveals that Enoch knew of the judgment because he had been to the places where these realities were revealed to him. Your ability to see beyond the veil of the physical world and witness the eternal truths of the cosmos places you in a unique position as an intermediary between the human and the divine. What he saw was not just a distant vision, it was a tangible reality for him, a reality he was charged with sharing. This narrative not only enriches our understanding of the text, but challenges the conventional view of spirituality and judgment, suggesting that there is more to be revealed and understood about the role of the divine in our lives. The question that confronts us is, to what extent are we willing to accept Enoch's visions as a vital element of our spiritual understanding? This acceptance can redefine how we perceive judgment, not just as a distant event, but as a present reality that continues to shape our lives and beliefs. In times of rapid dissemination of information, the Book of Enoch resurfaces as a beacon of ancient wisdom, challenging established religious narratives and offering new spiritual perspectives to a generation eager for answers. While many ancient texts remain relegated to oblivion, the rediscovery of Enoch symbolizes a collective awakening where the sacred and the profane meet in an ongoing dialogue. The truth is that this is not just a literary phenomenon, it is a movement that reflects a thirst for authentic knowledge about spiritual roots that have been deliberately suppressed for centuries. This cultural and spiritual recovery movement is not accidental, but rather a response to the desire for a more inclusive and truthful narrative, which embraces Africa's contributions to global spirituality. What few realize is that the story of the Book of Enoch is a testament to African cultural resilience. While the West, during the Council of Nicaea, chose to exclude this text from the biblical canon, Ethiopia, through the Orthodox Church, preserved it as an integral part of its spiritual tradition. This decision was not just a matter of faith, but of resistance against the attempt at cultural erasure. The maintenance of the Book of Enoch in its complete form reflects the determination of a civilization that refused to accept the limitations imposed by hegemonic narratives. This text, with its grand visions and cosmic revelations, offers a window into a deeper understanding of Enoch's role as mediator between the divine and the human, a role that resonates strongly with the African spiritual tradition of interconnection between worlds. It turns out that the contemporary awakening around the Book of Enoch is not just about recovering a text. It's about reconnecting with a spiritual heritage that speaks directly to the hearts of communities of African descent, offering them a narrative in which they see themselves reflected. The recognition that this text was preserved by their ancestors not only validates its importance, but also strengthens the cultural and spiritual identity of a people whose history and contributions have for too long been minimized or ignored. The Book of Enoch, now accessible in several languages, including Portuguese, allows new generations to rediscover and claim their roots, reinforcing a sense of continuity and belonging. The facts reveal that, as the Western world slowly rediscovers the Book of Enoch, communities around the world, especially those of African origin, are leading a new wave of studies and discussions. This phenomenon is driven through a combination of access to technology, growing curiosity about African spiritual roots, and a rejection of the limiting narratives that have dominated for so long. This is a moment in which ancestral knowledge, previously considered heretical or marginal, finds its space at the table of contemporary spiritual discussions, where the plurality of voices is not only recognized, but celebrated. The contemporary awakening to the Book of Enoch is ultimately an invitation to collective introspection into what it means to truly know and understand our spiritual heritage. As the text continues to be explored and interpreted, it challenges each of us to question the stories we have been told and to seek the truth that resonates with our own spirits. The question that remains is, are we ready to embrace this rich tapestry of knowledge and spirituality that Enoch represents and that Africa has so diligently preserved? The answer to this question can redefine our understanding of spirituality and the cultural legacy we carry. Enoch's narrative challenges us to reconsider what it means to truly walk with God. This expression, mentioned in an enigmatic way in Genesis, takes on life and meaning far beyond words when explored through the Book of Enoch. Reality shows that Enoch not only walked with the divine, but lived an experience of such intimacy that it transcended human limitations and time. And if Enoch was truly on God's side, the implication is that he was a conduit of revelations and wisdom that transcend the boundaries between the human and the heavenly. He was a messenger of eternal truths, a figure who still intrigues and inspires those seeking a deeper understanding of spirituality today. What few realize is that the preservation of the Book of Enoch in Africa, especially in Ethiopia, was not a mere act of cultural resistance, but a spiritual statement. Over the centuries, as the West marginalized and abandoned texts like Enoch, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church maintained its spiritual integrity, recognizing in it a source of wisdom that resonated with its own traditions. History reveals that this preservation was more than a conservation effort. It was an act of faith and identification with the divine. A África, ao guardar o legado de Enoque, não apenas preservou texto, mas uma parte crucial da herança espiritual da humanidade, que desafia a compreensão limitada imposta por narrativas dominantes. Evidence indicates that the spiritual lineage that links Enoch to Africa is a web of connections that defies the logic of cultural erasure. Enoch's transformation into an almost mythical figure in Jewish tradition and his identification as Metatron reinforce this view that he transcended the human. But what few recognize is that this transformation is echoed in African spirituality, where connection with the spiritual world is an intrinsic part of existence. African spirituality, with its rich tapestry of beliefs and practices, reflects this same closeness between the divine and the human that Enoch personified. It turns out that, when considering Enoch as someone who walked with God, we find ourselves faced with a truth that transcends simple history. It is a truth that speaks to the human potential to connect with the divine, to reach beyond what is visible, and to preserve that connection across generations. Africa, by keeping Enoch's legacy alive, reminds us that the spiritual is not just an individual quest, but a collective journey that involves the memory and identity of a people. Sharing this narrative is an invitation to explore and recognize this deep connection that resists time and attempts at erasure. What this preservation teaches us is that Enoch is not just a figure from the distant past, but a living presence who continues to influence and inspire those who seek to understand the fullness of spiritual experience. It represents an unbreakable link between the material and spiritual world, a connection that Africa has kept and that is now revealed to the world. The question remains, are we ready to accept this spiritual heritage and allow it to guide us in our own walk with the divine?